Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. So, oftentimes we hear about a tech talent shortage in the industry where the demand for technical people, software engineers, people like that, far outstrips the supply. There are way more job openings than there are people who can fill those roles in technology, or so we hear about. Yet, if that's the case, then why is it so hard to break in as an entry-level junior developer? If you're a junior developer who just graduated boot camp or college or whatever, and you weren't highly recruited upon graduation, getting into the industry seems to be a really, really hard thing to do. So it seems to be a disconnect. How could the two things coexist? If there's a tech talent shortage, how could it be so hard to break in? And so I want to do a video about that today. So a lot of that boils down to matters of perception and what people are willing to accept and not willing to accept. So let's start with the first one, perception. The problem is that isn't a shortage of people in technology. There is a shortage of qualified people. There is a very, very big shortage of good engineers. Those are very, very hard to find. But finding just any Joe Schmo who can spin up a WordPress site and slap together a theme and throw it onto WordPress, that's really easy. In fact, you can find that under 10 bucks an hour now with virtual assistants over in the Philippines and whatnot. It's very easy to find that kind of talent, if you even want to call it talent. But going up the scale, excuse me, I mean, it's getting even easier across the board, like finding someone who can put together a quick Rails application or PHP, whatever, and throw it up on a Heroku dyno. That's becoming easier and easier too. The market has been flooded with entry level talent, and it's not very hard to do those things. But once you go up the ladder, it becomes very hard to find people qualified at the very hard things, obviously. So the problem is it's not that there's a shortage of engineers or tech talent. There's a shortage of good technical talent, good software engineers. So what happens is when there's an opening, um, when a company posts an opening for a job, an entry-level software job that pays pretty well, let's say $75,000, $80,000, they get inundated with resumes and applicants who are just not good, to be honest. Just frankly, not very smart, not very hardworking, and it shows. It shows pretty clearly. And so what happens is these hiring managers, these HR departments, and sometimes the actual technical people who are doing these interviews, how can I put, they become kind of like emotionally scarred, and they start to perceive all junior devs a certain way, and it's not a good way. So all of a sudden, if you're an entry-level dev, you are now facing this perception. And unfortunately, in this context, perception becomes reality. And so now you are fighting a stereotype that maybe you don't deserve. You probably didn't, maybe you didn't do anything to contribute to the stereotype, but you are now fighting this stereotype. It is now your problem, right? And if you're a member of a minority, you already understand how this works. So I'm a Asian American. I understand already how this works within certain contexts. Everyone just assumes I'm a terrible athlete, which in this case happens to be true, but they assume also a lot of other things about my persona, many of which aren't true. Oftentimes they assume I don't speak English, this stuff like that. It doesn't really bother me, but the point is that these are the dynamics you have to just negotiate in your day-to-day life, even though the reasons for them aren't your fault. Well, as a junior developer, an entry-level developer, I should say, not even junior, we're talking about people who haven't even gotten their first job. They have to face this perception, fair or unfair. Now, what I want to do next is show you a video from a senior developer. His name is Dylan Israel. He runs his own YouTube channel. It's really good. You should check it out. Here, I'll show you. This is the video I want to show you, but let me show you his channel as well so you can see. So, I want to make sure I don't get an email from Dylan saying, hey, you're ripping off my content. So here is his channel. Please check it out. Very good stuff. Very good insights on the industry, actually. I believe he's been programming for, I don't know how many years, but I believe he's based in Florida. I think he's a senior dev, and he certainly, if he's not, he certainly should be. So check it out. So let me show you, he's been doing interviews for entry-level devs in his company, and it's a relatively new experience for him. So let me show you, after a couple of weeks of interviews, kind of like the emotional scars it has left on this person. So watch this video.
There is not a shortage of developers. There is a shortage of good developers, and I'm sick of interviewing the bad ones. I'm sick of people coming in with 20 years experience saying that they're a full stack dev, and then you ask them JavaScript questions, and they say, I don't really do front end. What do you think full stack dev is? You know, I'm sick of you coming in with 3 times the amount of experience I have and not being able to reverse a string. That's what I'm sick of. I'm sick of that. And guys, I want you to understand that this is the competition you're going against a lot of times. So, can you solve algorithms on a whiteboard? Can you do FizzBuzz? Can you do these things? You're in the top 10%. This is.
So there it is. So you can hear the frustration in his voice. You can hear the exasperation in Dylan's overall delivery, because he's just been so scarred by meeting with all these entry-level junior applicants who are just not underqualified, just grotesquely unqualified. And there's so many of them, it eventually leaves an indelible impression on whoever's doing the interviews. Now, I can tell you personally, Dylan is 100% correct on all of this. If you put out a job, a software development role for entry level, just the sheer volume of garbage that comes in is impenetrable. And it gets to a point where you start to see every junior dev this way. And, you know, it can't, mathematically, it can't be true. There has to be good ones out there, right? So the problem is those good ones, the demand on them is now much, much, much higher to prove that they're one of the good ones, instead of one of the other 95% of just shitty devs who should, many of whom should never have even gotten into programming. That's a whole separate video, which I'll get into later. But they are now basically part of this big cesspool of just pathetically unqualified developers applying for jobs that they have not even a chance. It would be like me applying for an MBA, the MBA draft, right? And that after going through dozens of these kinds of candidates, it leaves a person feeling like Dylan Israel, just exasperated. Because if you're a senior developer, you don't have much time to mess around with, just really just people who waste your time. You don't have time for it. There is so much on your plate, and it never goes away. It's like an endless buffet, just nonstop. There's just more and more tickets are filling out for this bug and that bug and this new feature, and this PM is breathing down your throat for this new page to be implemented, and the CTO is asking when the refactor is going to be done, and it's just every day. This is just how it is every single day. And again, without exaggeration, I can honestly say that I'm probably awake around 16 hours each day, 16, 17 hours. From the moment I wake up to the literal moment I go back to bed, if I wanted to, I could just fill up the entire time with client work. And I could just do that for the rest of my life. Now, the reason that is because once a good developer is identified, all the work goes to him. All the stuff gets shoved on his plate. Because the cost of putting any of that work on a really bad developer is onerous. It's a lot of times it's unrecoverable. A bad developer won't, a mediocre developer might slow down a project. A bad developer can destroy a project, can actually just ruin the project to the point where you're past the point of no return. You got to start over, and it's not that you're making slow progress. It's that you've made a U-turn. Now you're going backwards. So bad developers will move the code base backwards. So what happens is, you have these companies that are identifying, looking for those, those needles in a haystack, those those roughly 1 in 20, I would say, based on my own personal observation. I would say the number is about 1 in 20. So the other 19 are just no, like they're just going to ruin your code base, and you're looking for that 1 in 20 who will move the ball forward. Who will actually help your code base, who will help your project grow and help your company, the code base grow. So once they find that one, they just dump all the work on that one, and they disregard the other 19, right? Um, if they don't find that one after going through dozens of applicants, they just leave it open. They would rather have nothing than a bad developer, and I completely agree with that. Having worked with a couple bad developers, I mean, also having been one myself 7 years ago, um, I completely agree with that mentality. You're better off not having anything than having a bad developer. And so a lot of times that's why we have this dynamic where there's a clear tech shortage in terms of people who can fulfill the roles, but there's sort of a crunch at the entry level where there's a million junior developers looking for roles, but very few of them actually succeed in finding good jobs, not just any job. Anyone can find any job, but like a good job, right? A high paying job with working on a good technical challenge and a very challenging stack, working on cutting edge technology, things like that. Um, so you get this dynamic, this strange dynamic, but this is why. This is what's happening, and I've mentioned this in the past, but a lot of it is because you have just boot camps just cranking out graduate cohort after cohort after cohort, and it's been going on for 6 years. So you're flooding the market with entry level quote unquote talent. What's happening there is that the entry level bar is now being raised. Now it's very easy to find just some Joe Schmo who went to XYZ bootcamp who can spin up a Rails application, throw it up on Heroku, and connect it to a SQL database, and that's now the bar for entry level. Whereas 5 years ago, that was not entry level. That was at least intermediate, right? So the bar is being raised, and so basically, because of the influx of all these people. And plus there are just more people studying CS in college as well because it's become popularized. It's become mainstreamed with the HBO show and the movie, the Facebook movie, and also just the media just glamorizing the tech CEOs and Elon Musk and stuff like that. So you get a lot more just CS majors, and that creates a whole nother dynamic. Adds a whole new influx of people in the industry at the entry level. Now, not everyone can be qualified. CS is not one of those things where like anyone can just study and get into it. Well, I mean, literally it is, but how can I put it? Not everyone will succeed, and as I often say, more people will fail than succeed. So it's actually kind of the truest form of meritocracy that you're going to find. Like, you just do it or you don't. But that doesn't mean everyone will succeed, obviously, right? And so what's happening at the entry level is that there's just too much inundation, and as a result, it has colored the perspective of people on the hiring side, including myself. Basically, if you're an entry level developer, what you have to understand is that you are guilty until proven innocent. That's just how it is. It's not your fault. Certainly not your fault, but it is your problem. You are guilty until proven innocent. And that's just what things have become. This is just where we are now. And judging by trends in the industry, I don't see it changing anytime soon. In fact, I only see it getting worse because coding boot camps are really popular these days. In New York City, when I was in New York City, I was running into like General Assembly graduates like in the subway, like on a weekly basis. It was just everywhere. And you could just tell on first contact with a lot of these people, just, man, he was just suckered in, or she was just suckered in. She's not going to make it. He's not going to make it. He basically traded in a $40,000 a year job for a $50,000 a year job, and like that's it. That's the only bump he's going to get on that, if anything at all, or maybe a $45,000 a year job. because no high quality tech firm is going to hire a lot of these people that I met with, and it's unfortunate because a lot of that could have been determined before 12-week boot camp, 16-week boot camp, or whatever the courses are these days. So I guess the moral of the story is that as an entry-level developer, you are guilty until proven innocent, and it's not your fault, but it is your problem, and you have to understand that Dylan Israel's rant here, or at least the 50 seconds of it that I took out, he is spot on accurate. There's nothing here he's saying that is hyperbole. In fact, I don't think he went far enough. So be aware of that. The perception of you is you are in the boat of this guy's a clown, he's not qualified. All of that is the perception of you until you prove them the opposite. And you have to prove them the opposite, and that's a sort of a burden you have to accept as an entry level. Now, the good news is once you get past the entry level, things get much easier because you've essentially gotten past the initial filter and the initial screening. So, if the salaries go way up after that. So if you have like an entry level job, let's say it's like $70,000 in the coasts, so like New York or San Francisco, that's about right for entry level. $65,000-$70,000. Most of that is just hedging to make sure that you're not a complete shithead, and that if they have to fire you after 1 year, they've spent only $60,000 or $70,000, and that's it. But once you get past that bar, let's say once you get past the 18th month, year and a half, closer to maybe 2 years, depending on just the experience, you can go from 70 to like 95 pretty quick. I would say that's a pretty big jump. I mean, where else are you going to go get a $20,000 a year jump each year? That's not going to happen. That's because you've effectively qualified past that first bar, that basically the shithead filter. You're past the shithead filter. So once you've done like 2 years at a tech firm, assuming you've left on good terms and things like that, you've essentially been vetted out of the entry-level pool where you are no longer guilty until proven innocent. That's you've gotten past that bar, and so you're now operating in a more how can I put it, more efficient market, labor market, where the salaries and the demand match up better. So that you after the first, let's say 2 years, definitely 2 years if you do a good job, you're gonna have you should be able to command 90K and up. I mean, I'd be surprised if it wasn't 100K in San Francisco and New York City. So that's a pretty big jump. So that's why you see these developers leave from one company to another roughly every 2 years. That's why it happens. So it's kind of like it's actually a lot like the sports system in the United States, where you have these young athletes coming up, and they're making like $500,000 a year, which sounds like a lot, but in sports salaries, it's not a lot. Let's say they make like $500,000 a year, and they do that for the first 4 years of their career. And then once they've proven that they are able to play at the highest level consistently, they go from making $500,000 to making like $9 million. That's a tremendous jump, right? That's because they've passed essentially the shithead filter. They passed that filter to where the jury is no longer out. There's no longer any question marks on this individual. He's proven he can perform at the highest level. And so the salaries start to tremendously increase to where it's more market efficient. And that's what happens. This particularly happens in Major League Baseball, where the rookie contracts are heavily regulated. I don't want to get into this too much. It's not a sports channel, but it's a similar dynamic where in software engineering, that first 12 to 24 months, the jury's still out on you. Like this guy might be a complete clown. He might be completely ineffective. We need to hedge our bets, and we need to see whether or not he can make it through. And once you do, then you can operate at a more at a salary that's more consistent with your expectations, at least going into a boot camp. So understand that this is the perception of you going into an entry-level interview. People don't not necessarily want you to fail. That's not really the idea here. Nobody wants you to fail. They've just dealt with so many unqualified people that they become scarred by the experience. I've been on the receiving end of this too. I've been on the receiving end of this where I was just treated like garbage by certain people because they just assumed I was an idiot. I'll do another video on that one day maybe, but that's what it is. And so that's something you have to be aware about, and you have to go out of your way to prove that you're not in that category. And statistically speaking, you likely are in that category, just statistically speaking. So that is why when you're applying for entry-level jobs, it seems like the world is against you. That's why. So you have to prove beyond the shadow of a doubt that no, I am not one of those ass clowns. I'm better, I'm smarter, I'm harder working, I'm more effective, I'm faster, I'm everything. Just you have to prove it. You have to prove that. That's on you. So otherwise you're guilty until proven innocent. And that's the main message in this I guess in this video. So yep, that's it. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions and as well as any video topic suggestions. So take care.